Immortal ogres hunted endlessly for points. These creatures, no matter how many times they're slain, always return the next day, stronger, faster, and far more terrifying. Yet thanks to his deadly skill, decapitation, he cuts them down in a single clean strike, treating each hunt as nothing more than training. With a simple gesture, he blesses a withered tree, transforming it into an emperor apple tree. Those apples, glowing with divine vitality, sell for an absurd fortune. But he wasn't always this strong nor this confident. To truly grasp his journey, we must return to where it all began. The earth was withering, barely breathing. Its once vibrant energy had faded, leaving only emptiness and despair. And then something, or rather someone, revealed what the dying world needed most. From other realms, dispatchers emerged, bringing back resources crucial for humanity's survival. Among them was our man, Chansu, scraping by with a pitiful gardening job surrounded by waste. One day, he makes his way to the dispatcher reunion center, where waves of people crowd the hall, desperate to learn whether their loved ones are still alive. Pushing through the chaos, Chansu forces his way to the front desk to speak with the receptionist. But when the receptionist checks his record, he finds that Chansu doesn't have enough funds to request the investigation he wants. The man coldly tells him to come back once he's gathered the required payment. Desperate, Chansu pleads for at least a sliver of information, anything at all. Yet before he can get another word out, another customer shoves him aside and he's forced to step away, defeated. He walks home with heavy steps, his determination barely holding him together. His father, once a top-ranked veteran known as a returning, had been dispatched again when Earth's condition worsened. Since that day, Chansu hasn't seen him. Time passed and his father's face grew faint in his memory, like a dream slowly fading away. Then out of nowhere, a tremendous force slams into the side of his apartment. A massive wave of energy bursts through, flinging him into the wall like a rag doll. Hours later, he wakes up dazed and in pain. As if that wasn't enough, an S-ranked attorney suddenly announces his retirement, shocking the world. The man admits brokenly that he failed to protect the dispatchers who fought beside him. He confesses he couldn't even safeguard his god, and so he returned alone, burdened by failure. The earthquake and the blinding light, it turns out, were caused by his tragic re-entry. With a voice cracking from guilt, he declares his retirement and urges everyone to continue protecting Earth in his stead. Just when Chansu begins to think he's losing his mind, a mysterious voice calls for him to look down. There he finds a small talking rabbit clutching a tablet, gazing up at him. Startled beyond belief, Chansu falls backward in shock, but the rabbit remains calm, asking if he is indeed Chansu. The rabbit tells him to relax, claiming to bring wonderful news. Then with an almost smug grin, the rabbit congratulates him. Chansu has been chosen as a dispatcher. Chansu stares in disbelief, asking again if the rabbit truly understands what he's saying. The rabbit admits Chansu must be confused, but insists that doesn't change the truth, he's been chosen. Since Chansu looks suspicious, the rabbit suggests they move somewhere more private. Though Chansu's only real skill is pruning trees and flowers, the rabbit takes a deep breath and tells himself that there must always be a reason for fate's choices. He assures Chansu that even if he feels worthless, destiny itself has still selected him. Chansu tries to push open a massive gate, but of course it won't budge. Watching him struggle, the rabbit groans in disgust, asking what exactly he thinks he's doing. The rabbit then points to the real entrance off to the right. When Chansu looks, his eyes widen. It's a tiny door, just the right size for a rabbit, not a human. The rabbit insists he's never had a problem using it, prompting Chansu to snap back that that's because he's a rabbit. The rabbit crosses his arms, asking if Chansu is truly sure about his decision. He reminds Chansu of his long history of failures, but now fate itself is offering him one rare chance. The rabbit asks whether he really believes such an opportunity will ever come again. Finally, he tells Chansu it's entirely his choice. He can walk away if that's truly what he wants. After hearing that, Chansu exhales deeply, lowers his head and crawls through the small door, ready or perhaps not for whatever awaits beyond. The sight before him leaves Chansu completely stunned. He had been expecting a cramped little office, not this vast and unreal place. The rabbit, still calm, explains that there exists a world perfectly suited for him. Chansu blinks in confusion, asking if that means there's a separate world made to fit each individual. The rabbit nods and reveals that there's a world called block-type land grabbing, where a major event is currently underway. Chansu tilts his head, admitting it's his first time hearing about such a place. The rabbit chuckles and tells him that this particular world has recently become the most sought-after of them all, because it grants the divine protection of a god. Hearing that, Chansu's curiosity spikes, especially since the returner also spoke about a god. The rabbit notices the shift in his expression and assures him that being chosen has nothing to do with the recent commotion. Still, because Chansu happens to be his favorite, the rabbit says he'll give him a special privilege, the right to choose which god will accompany him. With a mischievous grin, the rabbit pulls out 3 shimmering cards and asks if Chansu is ready to make his choice. Chansu stares blankly, utterly baffled by what's happening. He doesn't even know which card is good or bad or what any of them truly mean. The rabbit reminds him that such chances don't come twice in a lifetime, and Chansu nods, remembering those words all too well. The thought of his father flashes across his mind. He clenches his fists, furious with himself for even hesitating when faced with destiny. Suddenly, the card in his hand glows, and a visual manifestation of a god materializes before him. The sheer presence of it terrifies him, sending a chill deep into his bones. When he finally looks at the card, he realizes that it represents the god of negation, marked with a 44% rate. The rabbit sighs and tells him not to freak out, that the whole terrifying display was just dramatic flair. Heart-pounding, Chansu gulps and demands to know what kind of god would need such an over-the-top effect just to introduce itself. He dusts himself off, still trembling, and hesitantly asks if he's allowed to draw again. To his surprise, the rabbit nods and says yes. Without wasting a second, Chansu grabs another card, only to end up drawing the god of negation once more. Frustration boils over. He curses under his breath, accusing the entire process of being rigged. There's no way he could be pulling the same god twice in a row. The rabbit calmly replies that the cards are perfectly fine. Then with a faint smirk he says Chansu has one final chance, one last draw to change his fate, and urges him to choose wisely this time. Chansu groans in irritation, deciding he'll just pick anything as long as it's not that cursed god of negation. As he reaches out and flips the final card, his face lights up with sudden hope. This time he pulls the goddess of abundance, a divine being with less than a 1% appearance rate. At first, his excitement fades, thinking it's useless, until the goddess image appears before him and she's breathtakingly beautiful. Even the rabbit notices the dreamy look plastered across Chansu's face. Smiling slyly, the rabbit asks if he'd like another chance. Chansu's eyes widen in disbelief. Hadn't this guy just said it was his last shot? He cautiously asks what would happen if he decides to keep this card, and the rabbit tells him he would have to depart right away. The suddenness of it leaves Chansu speechless. The rabbit tilts his head and asks if there's any real reason for hesitation. He reminds Chansu that this is a rare opportunity to transcend from a dispatcher to a returner. Then, like a cunning salesman, he begins painting a picture of glory, people cheering, praising him as a hero who saved the world. Slowly, Chansu starts to believe him, realizing that maybe the rabbit is right. After all, what did he have to lose? His life so far had been nothing but disappointment and emptiness. The goddess image flashes once again before him, exactly as he imagined her in his mind. A smile spreads across his face. With a goddess like that by his side, he feels like he could accomplish anything. Mustering courage, Chansu finally asks where he's supposed to go. The rabbit gestures gracefully and opens a swirling portal, announcing that it's time to begin. But before Chansu can even react, the rabbit shoves him straight toward it. Panic flashes across his face as he yells out, asking if it's really safe to enter the portal. Despite his fear, he steels himself. He's not about to turn back now. While daydreaming about the success waiting ahead, the rabbit gives one final push, sending him tumbling through the glowing vortex. In that instant, a stern voice echoes from above, scolding the rabbit for interfering directly in matters he knows are strictly forbidden. A faint notification pops up before Chansu's eyes, explaining that the percentage on his card represents the size of the god's faction. His eyes widen in horror. He had thought it was just a probability rate, but it turns out to be something far worse. Pain and regret fill him as he realizes how little he actually understood about this entire process. Looking around, he sees nothing but desolation, a barren wasteland stretching endlessly in every direction. To make things even worse, the goddess he chose doesn't even have a faction, leaving him stranded in a doomed world. Tears well up in his eyes as the harsh truth sinks in. He had expected to awaken in a land of abundance, but all that lies before him is lifeless, empty soil, a wasteland mocking his broken hopes. A glowing system window suddenly flickers before his eyes, welcoming Chansu to the world of digging. The message declares that he is now the apostle of the goddess. His mission to secure as many land rights as possible by digging. Before diving into any of that, Chansu decides to take a look around first, wanting to understand his surroundings. The first thought that crosses his mind is that he needs to find the goddess herself. Luckily, being a gardener, the sickle in his hand feels perfectly natural, almost as if it was made just for him. But then an overwhelming presence creeps up from behind, sending chills racing down his spine. Acting on instinct, he swings his sickle hard in self-defense, turning sharply toward the threat. But instead of a monster, he finds a chubby little hamster staring back at him. Chansu crouches and studies it closely, realizing that the tiny creature doesn't seem hostile at all. A mischievous thought crosses his mind, maybe he could earn a bonus for defeating it. But before he can act, the terrified hamster screams at the top of its lungs, making Chansu smirk in amusement. He's thoroughly enjoying teasing it. Eventually, he decides to spare the poor thing, as long as it doesn't cause him any trouble. The hamster spins around, twitching its nose, and begins to walk away. To Chansu's surprise, it pauses and gestures for him to follow. Curiosity taking over, Chansu runs after the little creature. It's impressively fast for its size, scurrying ahead with surprising agility. He wonders where on earth it's taking him. They finally arrive at a narrow stream. Without hesitation, Chansu scoops up some water into his bottle and drinks eagerly. The cold liquid refreshes him instantly, washing away the exhaustion. He then turns to the hamster, asking if it happens to know where the goddess resides. The hamster squeaks as if trying to respond, its tiny mouth moving quickly. Then it turns again and continues walking, urging him onward. As Chansu follows, his foot catches on something buried in the dirt, a shriveled ginseng root. The discovery startles him. He frowns, wondering how ginseng could even survive in such a shabby, barren place. Before he can think further, the hamster darts back and snatches the ginseng from his hands. Chansu stares in confusion, assuming the herb must be important to it. But just then, a system notification appears, informing him that he has discovered the goddess. He grabs the hamster, sighing that he doesn't have time to play around right now. Yet the system continues flashing, confirming again that this is the goddess he's been searching for. In one of the most absurd revelations of his life, the wilted ginseng turns out to be the goddess. Chansu can hardly process it. There's no way this pathetic little root could be the radiant deity he saw earlier. After all, the goddess he met in the vision was vibrant, full of life and beauty. The hamster, seemingly prepared for this disbelief, pulls out a tiny magnifying glass and hands it to him. Through it, he finally sees the truth and the shock hits hard. Holding his head, he groans in pain as he realizes that the land rights, the percentages, everything from before was a warning of this exact situation. He recalls how the percentage numbers had climbed during his draw, symbolizing the strength of a god's influence. That means the goddess must have completely withered because her influence had dropped to nothing. He stares at her small, lifeless form, wondering why she won't wake up. Then it clicks, maybe, just maybe, water could revive her. He gently pours some over her frail body and, to his amazement, the goddess begins to stir, proving that the water works. Overexcited, Chansu keeps pouring until she's nearly drowning, sputtering for him to stop before she collapses again. Finally, with a gasp, the goddess awakens, alive once more. Chansu cheers, proud of his life-saving efforts, while the hamster dances happily beside its restored master. The moment feels sacred, and Chansu quickly bows, offering his formal greetings to the goddess. But deep down, he's utterly lost, unsure of what to do next. Then another window pops up, telling him that he can grow stronger by using his available skills. Chansu blinks in surprise. He hadn't even realized he had any skills to begin with. He notices one option labeled Goddess's Blessing. There's no description of what it does, but it sounds divine enough. The moment he activates it, the name reveals itself: decapitation. Chansu freezes, horrified. That word only means one thing: cutting off heads. The idea of doing that to survive under the goddess of abundance makes his stomach twist. Still, he convinces himself there's no way a goddess of abundance would actually bestow such a brutal power. He stands in silence, overthinking every possible meaning behind it, his mind swirling with unease about what lies ahead. Then it suddenly hits Chansu. Maybe the hamster is a perfect target for the decapitation skill. Meanwhile, the hamster is still joyfully celebrating the goddess's revival, completely unaware that Chansu is staring at it with the most wicked look imaginable. He grips his sickle tightly, fully ready to split the poor thing in two. But just before the blade lands, the hamster bolts away in panic. Chansu chases after it, refusing to give up, until the hamster hides behind the goddess for protection. Calmly, Chansu tells the trembling hamster that he doesn't like what he's about to do, but it's all for the goddess's sake. Just as he turns around, a terrifying monster looms behind him. At that moment, Chansu notices the hamster jumping in front of the goddess to shield her. That's when he finally realizes the hamster isn't a monster after all. The real enemy is the creature standing before him. But the question remains, can he really defeat it? Still being the brave man he is, Chansu charges at the monster, sickle raised high. With the help of the decapitation skill, he can see the exact spot he needs to strike. He activates the skill, and with one clean swing, the monster's head flies off instantly. The goddess and hamster stand frozen, shocked at the sheer power of his attack. Chansu bows deeply to the hamster, apologizing for mistaking him for a monster and almost sending him to an early grave. He sincerely asks for forgiveness, and the hamster smiles before giving him a little thumbs up, showing there are no hard feelings. Relieved, Chansu decides to name the hamster Hamstall. The hamster blushes furiously, clearly delighted by the name. Just then, the system window pops up again, informing Chansu that the monster's head has been automatically transported due to the skill's effect. It also reveals the monster's name, the Immortal Ogre. Since he's slain one, a kill counter appears, allowing him to track how many he defeats. Chansu frowns, wondering why it's called immortal when it died so easily. Another notification appears, explaining that the offering has been sent to the goddess. Turning to her, Chansu notices the goddess looking noticeably livelier and more radiant than before. It dawns on him that the more monsters he kills, the faster the goddess regains her power and beauty. Fired up by the thought of seeing the goddess in her full divine glory, Chansu rushes off to hunt more monsters. Soon, he encounters an entire horde of immortal ogres. The system gives him a new tip. There are special points only usable within the world system itself, meaning they can't be traded between players. Surprised, Chansu wonders when he even earned those points. Regardless, he decides that slaying the ogres is now his main objective. Thankfully, his decapitation skill makes the task effortless. He charges straight into the horde, activating the skill, and cuts them down with a single swing each. Another notification pops up, explaining that he earns points for every monster he kills. Chansu takes this as the system's permission to go all out, to kill as many monsters as he wants. After slaying 4 immortal ogres, he sets his next goal, 100 kills, just for the thrill of it. Each victory makes him feel stronger, as if he's the hero of this world. Still, he can't help but ask, why call them immortal ogres when they die so easily? Returning to the goddess's resting place, he's stunned to find her looking even more breathtaking than before. A satisfied smile spreads across his face. The results are showing faster than he ever imagined. Excited, Chansu can't wait to see the goddess return to her perfect, divine form once again. It suddenly dawns on him that the goddess wants to be lifted into the tree. Without hesitation, Chansu assists the goddess, helping her ascend. Yet once she's up there, the goddess gestures for him to come closer. Then the system's voice echoes in his mind, informing him that he can activate the blessing of abundance, though every use will cost him precious points. Chansu decides to activate the blessing of abundance. He pours all his remaining skill points into the blessing without holding anything back. With the help of this sacred power, he channels energy into the barren tree until it becomes lush and alive once more. When he finally finishes, he's astonished to find that the tree has turned into a magnificent apple tree. Bright red apples dangle from every branch, glistening in the light. Though Chansu has never seen an apple before, something instinctively tells him that fruits shouldn't be that enormous. Even so, their fragrance tempts him to take a bite. Yet he resists the urge and decides instead to offer the first fruit of the harvest to the goddess. The goddess graciously accepts the offering. But what happens next leaves Chansu completely stunned. The goddess absorbs the apple within seconds, leaving no trace behind. The sight makes him question what he just witnessed. Her power is clearly beyond comprehension. He quickly realizes that angering this goddess would be the last thing he should ever do. Chansu then climbs the tree once more to gather a handful of apples for himself and Hamstal. He begins to understand that he must be quite strong, for the goddess he serves is not someone ordinary. When he finally takes a bite, the taste shocks him. It's unbelievably delicious. As he sits there quietly enjoying his apple breakfast, the goddess observes him in silence. She can't help but notice that not only has he awakened her, but he also revived an enormous tree in just a single day. A cold, shivering feeling runs through her body as she begins to wonder just where such a monstrous boy like Chansu could have come from. Digging into her own memories, she recalls her past as the goddess of abundance, once revered as the ruler of harvests and famed for producing the finest crops in all realms. But when the god of corruption began to consume other divine factions, abundance had no choice but to flee. Corruption's power grew too immense to resist. To survive, the goddess abandoned her domain of harvests and took up monster hunting instead. However, her followers were never meant for battle, and because of that, they couldn't win a single fight. Despite all that, she comes to a firm conclusion: Chansu now belongs to her. Meanwhile, Chansu reaches out to grab another apple. But before he can pluck it, the goddess suddenly clings tightly to his leg. Startled, Chansu panics, thinking the goddess is trying to absorb him too. In reality, she only wishes to embrace him, to express her gratitude for everything he has done. Sometime later, exhaustion overtakes the goddess and she drifts into sleep. Gently, Chansu lays her down on the altar so she can rest peacefully. But suddenly, a deafening thunderclap roars from the sky without warning. Chansu tenses, fearing the noise will wake her, but to his surprise, the goddess remains fast asleep. At that moment, the system's voice returns, announcing that the delivery event has now begun. Chansu blinks in disbelief, stunned that such an event even exists. But to make any delivery, he realizes he needs a way to contact people back on Earth. He then notices that Hamstal too looks completely drained. So he gently sets Hamstal beside the sleeping goddess, covering them both with a blanket made of soft leaves. Meanwhile, far away at the Reincarnation Trading Company, Hasujin, the apostle of reincarnation, bursts into her boss's office fuming, to scold him for dumping even more work on her. She complains that she's already overwhelmed as it is. Apparently, they've just received a new order to deliver apples. But the order comes with a strange note: there's no money involved, meaning they'll be bartering apples in exchange for goods instead. Haesujin yells at her boss, demanding to know if she's being punished, or if she made some grave mistake to deserve this pathetic assignment. But her boss calmly says no. He explains that the trip to collect apples will actually be good for her. It'll serve as a brief vacation. He reminds her that staying in the office only means more work piling up on her desk. And with a sly grin, he urges her to take the trip and clear her mind for a while. Haesujin argues back, pointing out that the real reason he's sending her is simply because there's no one else available for the trip. Her boss laughs awkwardly, realizing she might actually be right with that accusation. Still, he urges her to hurry along, insisting that she might stumble upon something fortunate during the journey. With a cheerful wave, he bids her farewell, hoping that something worthwhile will come out of this unexpected assignment. Checking the order logs, Haesujin discovers that she has a pile of deliveries lined up ahead of her. She sighs, hoping the effort will be worth it, otherwise she knows she'll be in deep trouble. Meanwhile, Chansu spots Homstall happily munching on the apples. He rushes over, grabbing him by the scruff and telling him to quit fooling around with the fruits. He explains sternly that those apples aren't for eating. They're meant for trading since they'll be meeting someone later that day. After all, the delivery person is traveling a long distance just to reach them. Chansu figures that if he acts calm and professional on the first meeting, it'll leave a strong impression on whoever the person turns out to be. From the details he received when registering for the delivery event, he learns that the world is divided into countless blocks, and that the Block Territory Conquest Grand Summon event is currently active. To move from one block to another, a movement ticket is required. Realizing how empty his surroundings are, Chansu estimates it would take a full week just to reach the nearest village on foot. He's relieved that the upcoming delivery will only take 2 days. Even though that's pretty fast, Chansu doesn't care. What matters most is getting his sleeping bags as soon as possible. He also makes it his goal to raise the goddess's affection toward him to the highest level, so he won't risk upsetting her. Lately, he's also noticed that immortal ogres have begun appearing on their own since the previous day, which works perfectly in his favor. He finally understands that the word immortal in their name simply refers to their ability to revive endlessly. Even so, Chansu doesn't mind. As long as he can keep defeating them and earning points, he's satisfied. While battling these relentless creatures, he nearly gets crushed from behind by one of them. Yet even in that close call, Chansu feels no real sense of danger. These monsters simply aren't threatening to him anymore. Watching from above, Haesujin observes the whole fight from the sky. Her reaction mirrors that of everyone who's ever witnessed Chansu in action against monsters. All she can see is an unbelievably powerful man who treats monsters like breakfast. It turns out the immortal ogre was once considered a prime hunting target among dispatchers, since it awarded far more points than typical beasts. But no matter how many times it was slain, it would always resurrect the next day stronger and angrier than before. Even if a dispatcher moved to another block, the creature would still hunt them down, making it one of the most relentless enemies in existence. On top of that, the ogre would often leave a lingering curse on its victims, draining their strength over time until they eventually collapsed. Because of this, it became a creature that everyone learned to avoid. Watching from above, Haesujin wonders if Chansu is simply too reckless to care about the monster's retaliation. She also notices that Chansu isn't even bothering to purify the monsters after defeating them. Then she finds herself questioning, why would a swordsman of his caliber be picking apples of all things? Haesujin concludes that Chansu might not be the brightest swordmaster out there, but to stay on his good side, she decides the best approach is to handle him with utmost gentleness. After wiping out the entire horde of immortal ogres, Chansu realizes that his accumulated points have skyrocketed, and that they're still rising rapidly, almost exponentially. Thanks to the blessing, each apple is now worth 1,000 points. Chansu grins, realizing that reaching a total of 100 won't be an issue at all. He had always wondered why there was a shrine in this remote region, but now it seems like a jackpot waiting just for him. At that moment, Haesujin finally approaches and gives him a respectful bow. She introduces herself politely, explaining that she's from the Reincarnation Trading Company and has arrived to deliver his requested goods. Chansu excitedly shakes her hand, genuinely impressed that she managed to locate his block on her very first try. But then her eyes catch sight of the hamster, and her attention instantly shifts. The creature looks so soft and adorable that she's overcome with the urge to hug it. Chansu notices her expression and asks if she's feeling all right. She quickly assures him that she's fine, though the truth is she's just eager to get her hands on that squishy hamster. Chansu then invites Hasujin to follow him so he can show her where the apples are stored. He proudly remarks that the apples turned out incredibly well this season. Hasujin can hardly believe what she's seeing. The enormous tree before her is actually an apple tree. Chansu plucks one of the apples and asks if she'd like to try it. She accepts and is immediately stunned by the sheer size of the fruit. Taking a bite, Hasujin's eyes widen as she discovers how surprisingly sweet it is. And to her delight, its sweetness is perfectly balanced with a refreshing acidity. She quickly realizes that with how sweet and rich the apple's flavor is, it could easily sell for no less than 100,000 gold on the market. But Chansu misunderstands her, thinking she's implying that his apples are overpriced. Scratching his head nervously, Chansu asks how much she'd actually be willing to pay for them. Hasujin's response nearly makes him choke. She calmly tells him that each apple should fetch at least 20,000 gold. And when she adds that the price could rise above 30,000 if sold through a high-end department store, Chansu almost loses his mind. He's completely stunned by what he hears. Though Hasujin could easily cheat him for profit, she decides against it. She'd rather not risk losing a potential long-term partner. Deep down, she knows that if Chansu ever found out he'd been deceived, it would be her doom, so honesty seems like the smarter choice. Hasujin then explains that these apples aren't ordinary at all. She confesses that, in fact, the fruit holds far greater value than any regional specialty she's ever encountered. Pulling out a formal contract, she tells Chansu that the rest of his payment will be settled once he signs it. Chansu takes the pen and carefully reviews every clause in the document to see exactly what he's agreeing to. Hasujin's eyes widen when she notices that the company's profit share percentage has increased. But Chansu reassures her that it's no mistake. He deliberately raised it because he wants to build a solid, lasting relationship with her, and because she was honest about the apple's true worth. He stretches his hand out for a handshake, catching her completely off guard. Among the items he ordered are various seeds, food rations, and several cooking utensils. Additionally, there's a peculiar egg, a commemorative gift from the trading company. Hasujin explains that it's a special item meant to assist with his farming. As she hands the egg to him, she jokes that he might not even need it since he's already raising one. This puzzles Chansu, who insists he doesn't have any familiar like that. Hasujin points to Hamstall, assuming the hamster is actually his familiar. She then tells him that the more points he invests into the egg, the stronger the creature will become once it hatches. However, she warns him to be careful. If he goes too far, the egg will crack and fail entirely. She adds that once the egg starts trembling, that's the signal to stop. Chansu listens carefully, saying he'll just have to test it himself to get a proper sense of the process. After what feels like a long and tedious discussion, they finalize all the schedules, figures, and upcoming visit dates. With everything settled, they officially conclude the first stage of their deal. Once Hasujin departs, Chansu walks over to the goddess, expressing gratitude for keeping herself hidden while Hasujin was present. Looking over all the supplies he received, he's still amazed by how profitable apple trading has turned out to be. But then he spots the goddess cuddling the eggs, and realizes he might need to hatch them sooner than expected. Of course, that means he'll need a lot more points first. To earn them, he knows exactly what must be done. Hunt down more monsters. Still, he's not naive enough to think it'll be easy. Challenges await, but Chansu is built to face them head-on. Meanwhile, back at the trading company, Hasujin's boss is astonished to hear that a combat-oriented individual managed to grow such an impressive yield of apples. Hasujin explains that Chansu even defeated undead monsters using nothing more than a rusty sickle, and he struck only at their heads. The memory of it still leaves her in disbelief, and her boss just stares blankly at her until Hasujin grabs his hand, reminding him that they're supposed to share the apples together later. Back in the world of abundance, Chansu is already channeling points into the egg, determined to make it hatch. He wonders whether it'll produce a cute creature or a mighty beast. His hopes rise high as he imagines an SS-rank familiar emerging from within. But the moment the egg cracks open and a tiny chick pops out, Chansu's proud smile vanishes instantly. He stares in disbelief. After all that excitement, it's just a chicken. He was expecting a warrior, not poultry. Completely deflated, he starts wondering what he's supposed to do with it now. His first thought is to raise it for food, plain and simple. Yet he hesitates. After all, how could he possibly eat a chick he invested 120,000 points into? Wanting to keep some distance, he names the chick Ari, hoping the simple name will stop him from getting too attached. Soon after, he feels that same excitement building again as he prepares to hatch another egg. But that excitement crashes once more when a pig emerges instead. Without hesitation, he names the pig Doji. Overcome with disappointment, Chansu sighs, wondering why he keeps getting farm animals instead of proper familiars. At this point, he feels like he's been scammed. Just then, both Ari and Doji waddle up to the goddess and bow before her. The two humbly apologize for failing to serve their goddess as faithfully as they should have. Chansu's aura darkens and they both sense the faint threat in his presence, making the goddess's warning all too real. The goddess advises them to behave perfectly, until Chansu eventually gains the skill to communicate with them directly. The two familiars nod in agreement, deciding that for now, the safest choice is to stay quiet and simply observe. The next morning, Chansu sets out on his usual routine. His main targets today are the undead monsters. Back at the farm, Doji and Ari wake up early, startled by the loud commotion outside. Their sleep vanishes the moment they see Chansu sprinting around. His sickle flashes as he cuts down the undead one after another. It's then that the two finally realize just how dangerous Chansu truly is. The goddess wasn't joking when she told them to behave. Ari nervously tells Doji that Chansu had been looking at them in a very strange way, and Doji panics as he remembers it. Just as Chansu finishes slaying the last monster, Ari and Doji appear with towels wrapped around their heads, praising his hard work and offering him a towel to clean up. After witnessing his strength firsthand, they finally understand what the goddess meant about being useful. Once he's cleaned up, Chansu offers them an apple. Doji immediately rushes toward the plate, while Ari tries to act composed and pretend he's not greedy. Chansu smiles, feeling happy to feed them. He remembers hearing that grape-fed pork tastes better after all. Ari scolds Doji, warning him not to eat too much or he'll end up becoming Chansu's ideal flavor. Even so, he manages to restrain himself. Chansu then offers some grains to Ari. Ari jumps onto them without hesitation. He feels proud of himself, thinking he's making the right choice. Unlike Doji, he won't end up as fried chicken. After breakfast, Chansu moves on to farming. He has Doji dig up the soil while Ari plants black bean seeds. Chansu picks up one of the seeds and studies it in his palm. The moment Ari spots it, his eyes fixate on it. He dashes toward Chansu, but Chansu hides the seed away, explaining that the first harvest must always be offered to the goddess. As usual, he presents the seed to her. The goddess absorbs it in her own strange, mysterious way, just like before. Chansu then tells Ari and Doji it's time to eat, since they'll be planting potatoes afterward. This time, Ari eats just as much as Doji. Both of them end up stuffed like balloons. Ari regrets it, feeling like he's doomed because he couldn't control his hunger. Meanwhile, Chansu is simply delighted to see them eating well. It motivates him to grow even more crops for them to enjoy. At the trading company, the manager notices that the apples are the only items left for sale. Many customers have gathered, but none are willing to buy, a predictable outcome. He had even decorated and packaged the apples beautifully to make them look more appealing. Yet people still can't believe a single apple could be worth 200,000 gold. Frustrated, he scratches his head, unsure how to convince anyone of their incredible taste. He's certain that if someone would just take one bite, their minds would change, but getting that first bite is the problem. Suddenly, he hears someone making a purchase. He rushes to the counter to find out what happened, and the attendant informs him that all the apples have been sold. The attendant explains that one person tried a sample and immediately bought everything. The signature on the payment slip reads Rohan. It finally dawns on the manager that the buyer who just cleared out their stock is none other than Rohan, the pioneer of the handicap training method. Rohan is also known as the unrivaled swordmaster, making this a huge deal. The manager realizes they've just struck gold. The story spreads like wildfire, and soon everyone believes that these apples are what Rohan ate to gain his legendary swordsmanship. Back at the company, Hasujin's boss, Ryuu, is overwhelmed with calls from everywhere. Everyone wants a box, or even 100 boxes, of the so-called miracle apple. A week after Chansu's arrival in the world of abundance, he admits that life has been going exceptionally well. While cooking his delicious potatoes, Doji clings to his leg, clearly wanting some. But Chansu laughs and tells him that the potatoes aren't for him. After all, Doji just finished his own meal. Still, he ends up giving him a portion to eat anyway. Moments later, Hasujin arrives on the scene. She's startled to find that every one of Chansu's familiars has already hatched. To Hasujin, it looks like a gathering of adorable plush creatures she wants to hug and cuddle for comfort. Meanwhile, Homstall and the others quickly move to cover the goddess, shielding her from Hasujin's piercing gaze. Chansu then turns to her and asks why she's here. Hasujin smiles and says she's got some good news to share. She proudly shows him a bunch of sales receipts, telling Chansu that every single Emperor apple has sold out. And not only that, they all went for the full listed price. Chansu clutches his head in disbelief and awe, stunned that everything disappeared from stock in just 2 days. Hasujin continues, explaining that the craziest part is how everyone now wants to get their hands on more apples. Since he earns 30% of the total profit, Chansu quickly calculates that means around 60,000 gold per apple. Doing the math in his head, he realizes that if he sold 50 apples a day, that would mean a daily profit of 3 million. The realization sends Chansu's mind soaring. An annual income approaching 1 billion gold is within reach. Excitement fills him. It feels like he's finally heading down the right path. Deep down, he believes that this success might eventually help him uncover something about his parents. With a grin, Chansu tells Hasujin not to take him for a downer. Still, he curiously asks how long she thinks the Emperor Apple craze will actually last. Hasujin reassures him that she understands his worry, but with a calm tone explains that selling just 100 apples a day to a market of 1 million potential buyers means business could last for nearly 27 years. Chansu is dumbfounded, thinking she's exaggerating by a long shot, but Hasujin simply smiles and tells him there's no need to stress. Then she leans closer and asks if he's considered expanding his apple production. Chansu lets out a nervous laugh, admitting that he's also been cultivating other crops, and he suggests she try some of them. He confidently tells her that they taste just as good as the apples. At that, Hasujin's eyes sparkle mischievously, gleaming with anticipation. She takes a bite of the potatoes he offers. In the next instant, she practically melts with joy, overwhelmed by how naturally sweet they are. Just then, Chansu brings out pancakes and crispy fries. Tears of delight roll down Hasujin's cheeks as she savors every bite. She exclaims that these potato fries deserve to be considered a main course, rather than just a side dish. To complete the meal, Chansu serves roasted sweet potatoes. The moment the aroma fills the air, Doji and Ari lose control, rushing in excitement. They demand that Chansu share some with them as well. Laughing, Chansu suggests they all eat together. Then he notices Ari looking thin, and the reason becomes clear. It's because Doji has been stealing Ari's food all along, leaving him half-starved. Hamstal hops onto the table too, joining Hasujin in the feast. Chansu turns to her and asks what she thinks of the potatoes, mentioning that he's planning to sell them next. Hasujin thanks him sincerely for the delicious meal, then asks if there's a way he can grow more crops while also boosting apple production. Chansu shakes his head, explaining that it would be tough since he needs more points to manage both, and it wouldn't be smart to spend all of them solely on farming. Hasujin nods, appreciating his hard work, but advises him to keep his focus mainly on the apples. She explains that all of the apostles are Korean, and that this world's culture has essentially been shaped around that fact. Then in a dramatic moment, Hasujin kneels before Chansu, begging him to make apple production his top priority. Realizing that there's no convincing her otherwise, Chansu finally asks if producing 100 apples per day will satisfy her. Her eyes gleam with excitement the instant she hears that. The next morning, Chansu heads out once again to hunt monsters as part of his routine. Doji turns to Ari and wonders aloud if it's really necessary for them to tag along every single time Chansu leaves. Ari snaps back, shouting that they're the only ones capable of watching over him, since Hamstal is basically useless in a fight. What they don't realize is that Chansu himself has been puzzled by why the two keep following him around. He figures they must be combat-type familiars, since no real familiar could possibly be that lazy or contribute nothing but eating. But that assumption crumbles the moment he sees the pair running for their lives from an undead monster. Chansu can only sigh and blame himself for ever thinking those two were as capable as he imagined. Suddenly, Doji stumbles and falls, giving the undead creature the perfect chance to close in. Chansu rushes forward to save him, but the distance between them is too wide. He yells to draw the monster's attention, but it doesn't even flinch. In desperation, Chansu swings his sickle, but the reach falls short. Out of nowhere, the monster collapses dead. Chansu freezes in shock, certain that his weapon never touched the target. Then realization strikes him. It must mean his skill has leveled up, expanding the attack range. To confirm it, Chansu tests it out by staying at a distance and swinging his sickle again, striking down monsters one after another. With a single clean swing, Chansu wipes out several enemies at once. A notification window flashes before his eyes, revealing the expanded range of his skill. On top of that, a new ability appears, mass decapitation. The discovery stuns Chansu, but he quickly realizes what this means. He can now handle even larger hordes of monsters at once. Excited, he charges forward in a frenzy, slicing through the battlefield and annihilating everything in sight. The sheer brutality of it sends chills down Ari and Doji's spines. Terrified, the two immediately retreat back to the goddess's side, breathless and trembling. She's stunned to see them return so soon. Ari hurriedly reports that while Chansu has definitely grown stronger, communication skills are still just as important. The goddess gently urges them to calm down, clarifying that she never granted him such a power. Then Doji blurts out that the name of the new skill is mass decapitation. The words alone make the goddess's expression twist in shock. Even she no longer knows what kind of person Chansu is turning into. Hearing that, Doji's imagination runs wild. He assumes the goddess herself must have been the one to bless Chansu with that power. Ari, fed up with his nonsense, slaps him hard and scolds him to listen to what the goddess actually says before spewing ridiculous ideas. The goddess then explains that this decapitation skill is a warped evolution of the basic harvesting skill. She reminds them that once the harvesting ability evolves, it allows the user to reap over a much wider range. She concludes that Chansu's skill must have evolved in that very way, except his version turned into something terrifyingly deadly. Ari can hardly believe it, noting that such advanced evolution is something only first-year apostles could normally achieve. The goddess nods, agreeing that this is precisely what makes Chansu so frightening. Still, she adds with a faint smile that he's a grateful and sincere man at heart, which brings her some comfort. The goddess then decides she will personally grant Chansu a communication skill once he returns, because she knows it's forbidden to directly define an apostle's destiny. Meanwhile, Chansu examines his status screen and finds that he has 2 potential skills to choose from. The goddess can hardly wait to tell him to stay safe and thank him properly for all he's done so far. But the thought of hearing Ari and the others scream at him through that new communication channel every time they get angry makes him shudder, realizing his life would be absolute torture if he chose that skill. So instead, he chooses Promise of Abundance. The instant he selects it, he notices the atmosphere around him grow strangely heavy and somber. Yet again, there's no description attached to the ability. Curious, Chansu picks up an apple, intending to offer it to the goddess as his first act of gratitude. But to his shock, the goddess turns away from him, tears streaming down her face. The system screen informs Chansu that the new skill's rewards depend entirely on how wisely he uses it. Still, he can't help but wonder why the goddess refuses the apple he offered so sincerely. Trying to lighten the mood, he reaches out and pinches Homstall's cheek. To his confusion, no points return to him. As he's pondering what went wrong, Hasujin rushes in with an urgent expression. She hurriedly tells him that he must claim his territory block and defend it immediately. The news stuns Chansu, and he asks if someone is planning to attack them. Hasujin explains that more than 5,000 people have already placed reservations. Chansu is speechless, and she adds that these buyers don't even care when the apples arrive, as long as they eventually receive them. For now, the only real support Chansu has is the goddess herself. He realizes that if he fails, both the goddess and the entire region will fall with him. Hasujin advises that the first step in securing everything is to claim the block and set up a fortified gate. Chansu agrees, adding that capturing nearby zones to establish a disguised base will bring them closer to her. Hasujin's eyes brighten at the suggestion. It's a brilliant idea. Once they occupy the block and install a portal door, they'll no longer be bound by movement restrictions. Still, Chansu can't help but ask why reservations suddenly skyrocketed. It just doesn't make sense. Hasujin explains that the entire district has gone wild due to the rumored effects of the Emperor Apple. Chansu frowns, asking what kind of effects she means, and she reveals that people are claiming the apples can cure all ailments. The revelation leaves him stunned. He knows there's no way that's true. Yet even Hasujin seems to believe it. But Chansu doesn't dwell on it too much. To him, after all, it's still just an apple. Meanwhile, a persistent journalist tails Rohan as he enters a house. Rohan pays a visit to his friend Yunsu, a grand alchemist by profession. He cheerfully tells Yunsu that he's brought him a recovery gift. Inside the box he presents is none other than a collection of Emperor apples. Yunsu stares in astonishment. He's heard the same wild rumors as everyone else, and he can hardly believe Rohan brought the legendary apples right to his doorstep. Yunsu takes a bite of the apple and instantly bursts with delight, exclaiming that its nutrition and flavor are both at their absolute peak. Unsu, completely taken aback, starts bombarding him with questions about the apple's origin and quality, but Rohan quickly reminds him that he's no food expert. As Yunsu savors each bite slowly and elegantly, Rohan, the one who actually brought the apples as a gift, devours his portion like a starving man. Unsu can only stare in disbelief, insisting that no apple could possibly reach such perfection, not even with the best fertilizer. Then Unsu suddenly yells in horror upon realizing his friend is eating the same apple, and Rohan, with a grin, urges him to stop complaining and eat faster before it's all gone. Yunsu, proud and unbothered, declares that he doesn't care since he can simply call Sun Hwan department store and order a whole box of those apples for himself. Confidently, he even tries to persuade them to sell by offering 3 times the normal price. Yet despite his persistence, it still doesn't work. While the two men continue their lighthearted banter, a nearby reporter snaps pictures of them, capturing every moment. Before long, an article surfaces, boldly claiming that the so-called Emperor Apple was the miraculous fruit that helped Yunsu recover and leave the hospital. The news quickly spreads like wildfire, fueling even more rumors. Ryu can only stare in disbelief, frustrated that everyone truly believes the apple is some sort of divine cure. Meanwhile, back in Abundance, Chansu tells the goddess that he'll be stepping out for a while to seize control of the surrounding blocks. Before leaving, he assigns Doji and Ari to stay behind and guard the goddess. The goddess is stunned to hear that Chansu is heading out to conquer territories, especially since he just acquired a new skill that isn't even meant for combat. In panic, she grabs his leg to stop him, desperately trying to warn him that it's dangerous. But since Chansu can't understand her language, he assumes she's holding on to him because she's hungry and in need of protein. With a bright grin, Chansu playfully asks if beef would be good enough for her. He then rushes into the storage room with excitement to fetch the frozen beef he had ordered earlier. His excitement builds. This is the first time he's about to enjoy real, genuine meat. Back on Earth, all he ever ate was lab-grown substitutes. Now, with a gleam in his eyes, Chansu lights up the stove and begins grilling the beef. He takes a deep breath and admits that the aroma is on a completely different level compared to the synthetic meat he used to eat. Doji, unable to contain his excitement, is already drooling, but Chansu quickly reminds him that the meat is meant for the goddess. Even Ari looks a bit disappointed, seeing that Doji just finished eating and is already ready to pounce on more food. As Chansu cooks, the goddess appears furious, her expression stormy and tense. But Chansu misreads her anger as simple hunger pangs. Once the meal is done, he proudly serves the freshly grilled meat to the goddess. To his utter shock, the goddess throws the beautifully cooked meat to the ground without hesitation. Stunned, Chansu wonders if maybe the meat was spoiled, which could explain why she rejected it. Still, he can't shake off the feeling that something is missing. The taste doesn't carry the same impact or shock value that the apple had. He convinces himself that this must be the reason the goddess refused to eat it. What he doesn't realize, however, is that the goddess is crying not out of anger, but because she doesn't want him to leave. Unfortunately, he remains completely oblivious, since he had foolishly ignored learning the communication skill. Meanwhile, Ari and Doji cheer joyfully as Chansu promises to bring back delicious meat for them once he returns. That night, Chansu quietly heads out as planned, while Ari and Doji sleep soundly like logs. Eventually, he reaches the border of the block. Accepting the option before him, Chansu steps into the next block, only to find himself surrounded by pitch-black darkness. He quickly activates his lantern, illuminating the area just enough to see where he's going. The new place looks entirely different from the one he came from. Suddenly, a swarm of tiny flying monsters rushes straight toward him. Since they're too small to target properly, Chansu makes a break for it. Their tiny size makes it impossible for him to even aim at their necks. Realizing he's outnumbered, he decides that retreating back the way he came is his best bet. Just then, undead monsters from the other block cross over. Chansu freezes in shock, but before he can launch an attack, he realizes that the undead creatures aren't hostile. Since he can't hear their voices, he doesn't understand that they're actually protecting him, believing that only they have the right to kill Chansu themselves. The undead then charge forward, clashing fiercely with the bug-like monsters. The chaotic battle gives Chansu the chance to slip back safely into his own block. A moment later, the system notifies him that he has gained bonus points for defeating evolved monsters. Chansu smirks darkly, realizing he's just stumbled upon a perfect goldmine for farming points. Chansu realizes that this new situation changes everything. He's not only earning more points, but his customer base is also rapidly growing. The undead monsters that once hunted him have now turned into nothing more than walking bonus rewards. Meanwhile, back at the department store, Hasujin grumbles about the overwhelming flood of phone calls and orders they've been receiving non-stop. Ryu admits that they've allowed the rumors to spread unchecked for far too long. But now he believes it's time to put an end to the chaos before things spiral completely out of control. To stop the madness, he firmly instructs Hasujin that any mention of the Emperor Apple is now absolutely forbidden. No more interviews, no more responses from now on. Silence and indifference will be their only answers. Hasujin protests, saying that such a strategy might backfire and cause complete disorder. Ryu argues otherwise, insisting that they must stay silent, even if someone tries to threaten them. Just as he finishes his statement, a cold blade suddenly rests against his neck, turning his words into chilling reality. A calm yet intimidating voice apologizes from behind for startling them. Ryu turns his head slowly, his heart pounding, only to see the man holding the sword. The renowned swordmaster Rohan. Paralyzed by fear, Ryu nervously asks why Rohan has come to his office. Rohan explains that he already spoke to Ryuwoo's superior, but the man failed to give him the answer he wanted. Now, he hopes Ryuwoo will be more cooperative. Then, without wasting time, Rohan poses the big question. He demands to know who's responsible for cultivating the Emperor Apple, and where that person is right now. Though frightened, Hasujin stands her ground, declaring that the company takes client confidentiality seriously and will not betray that trust. Hearing this, Rohan pulls out his sword once again, the sound of steel echoing through the room. But instead of cutting them down, he simply lets the weapon fall to the floor, shocking everyone. He calmly says that he doesn't need their help after all, he'll simply find the farmer himself, relying purely on his instincts. Hasujin is left speechless, questioning in disbelief whether such a thing could even be possible. But her fears are confirmed, as Rohan has already received information about the farmer's location. With firm steps, Rohan walks straight up to him. Without argument or hesitation, Rohan coolly states that he'll take 50 apples. Chansu points out that Rohan's offer is equal to the department store's price, but Rohan just nods, completely aware of what he's doing and unfazed by the cost. The sum of money Rohan offers is so outrageously high that Chansu can't help but consider selling him even more. Rohan, meanwhile, is practically drooling at the thought of tasting the divine apple once again. Chansu activates his blessing of abundance skill, preparing to harvest them for Rohan. But Rohan stops him, saying there's no need for such a thing, and he draws his sword. In a single blur of motion, he slices down every apple from the tree, leaving Chansu frozen in horror. He can't believe what just happened and convinces himself it must be some kind of system glitch. Despite the shock, Chansu quickly realizes that Rohan might actually be a powerful ally for conquering the new block. When asked if there's anything else to offer, Chansu mentions potatoes, but before he can even finish, Rohan bluntly rejects the idea. Chansu hurriedly adds that he also has sweet potatoes and beans, yet Rohan's answer stays the same, a firm no. As Chansu wonders if his plans will ever work out, Rohan strides toward him with determined steps. Without saying another word, Rohan heads straight for the new block, and Chansu has no choice but to sprint after him just to keep up. He's astonished that Rohan is entering the dangerous area so quickly and without hesitation. As Chansu struggles to catch up, Rohan grabs him by the collar, warning him to stay behind. Lingering around recklessly is far too dangerous. Chansu realizes how close he just came to being devoured by a monster that disguised itself as a plant. Acting fast, he activates his decapitation skill, but his triumphant smile fades the moment he spots Rohan working together with him on a strange-looking plant. Hasujin appears out of nowhere, shouting that she doesn't care what he's doing. What matters is why Rohan is there with him in the first place. Chansu is utterly stunned by her sudden arrival. Without wasting time, he kneels down and plants a seed, casting the blessing of abundance on it immediately. That's exactly what they were doing when Hasujin showed up. In no time, the seed sprouts and grows into a magnificent apple tree with bright, shimmering leaves. Hasujin stares in awe but comments that the apple gives off a strange smell. Chansu agrees, explaining that it's probably because of the unique environment. He then plucks one of the apples and offers it to Hasujin, asking if she'd like to try it, but she declines, saying she'll pass for now. While looking around, Hasujin notices strange plant-like creatures on the ground and identifies them as ostrich tails. Chansu is surprised. It's his first time hearing of such monsters. She explains that these monsters mimic the behavior of ostriches and only move around at night, making them incredibly difficult to capture. Examining one closely, Hasujin remarks that its condition is excellent. She collects a sample of its blood in a test tube and turns to Chansu, asking if he was the one who hunted them down. Chansu confirms proudly that he did it all himself, assuring her that Rohan had nothing to do with it. Then, curious, he asks if there's any particular issue with that. Instead of answering, Hasujin suddenly grabs his arm and asks eagerly if he'd be willing to sell the monsters. Apparently, ostrich tails fetch an extremely high price on the market. Intimidated by the intense look in her eyes, Chansu quickly agrees to sell them, and Hasujin throws her hand up into the air, celebrating as if she's just hit the jackpot. On top of everything, Chansu now has a swordmaster standing by his side, and Hasujin can't hide her joy, feeling like meeting Chansu is nothing short of a divine blessing. Her mind starts racing with dreams of all the potential products she could sell thanks to this partnership, when Chansu suddenly calls her name. Snapping out of her daydream, Hasujin opens her bag and begins pulling out all the supplies that Chansu had ordered earlier. It doesn't take long before Chansu constructs a cozy, portable home designed especially for adventurers. He then plants pest-repelling seeds all around the area, making it a safe haven. Watching the transformation, the goddess and her retainer can't contain their joy. They celebrate like gleeful children. Chansu himself is beaming with pride, thrilled by the realization that he's officially become a landowner. It turns out that each block of land is made up of 100 ownership units. Along with the purchase, several new features unlock, but the most fascinating one is the block trade assignment function. Hearing about it, Chansu can't help but smile. The feature seems to perfectly align with the goddess's very nature. The system then prompts him to choose a trait for the block, giving him two options, growth or death. At first glance, things don't seem much different no matter which option he selects. But Chansu's cheerful grin fades when he notices that one of the available features is spawned monster growth. Unfortunately, that also means the undead monsters are included in this enhancement. As usual, Chansu heads out to face monsters, and as always, he cuts them down with ease. He doesn't even notice Rohan's presence until the swordsman speaks up behind him. Rohan wonders what Chansu means by already, and Chansu reminds him that it hasn't even been a full week since Rohan bought the last batch of apples. When Chansu asks how many apples he wants this time, Rohan calmly replies that he'll take 120, though he wouldn't mind more if available. Upon arriving, Chansu is taken aback to find Rohan playing around like it's a casual afternoon. But in truth, Rohan's focus is entirely on the apples, that's all he came for. Chansu assumes Rohan hasn't realized the goddess's presence yet, since he keeps referring to her and her retainers as mere familiars. Because of that, Rohan says he'd like to stay and train nearby, but reassures Chansu that he fully intends to pay for his stay. The mention of payment instantly sparks Chansu's interest. Rohan smirks and tells him the hefty amount he's willing to offer, which nearly makes Chansu's eyes sparkle with greed. Overjoyed, Chansu practically trembles with excitement. He bows slightly, welcoming Rohan as his most esteemed customer. Rohan then asks if Chansu can actually fulfill his request, and Chansu confidently says yes. Still cautious, he asks if the environment will remain stable, to which Rohan assures him it absolutely will. Chansu follows up with another concern, whether things might suddenly explode out of nowhere, and once again, Rohan calmly tells him there's nothing to fear. Finally, Chansu admits that he doesn't have the ability to create monsters himself, since his points are already running low. He's surprised when Rohan says that's perfectly fine, that's all he needed to hear. Chansu has no objection but adds that he has one more request, something far more valuable than money. With a serious tone, Chansu confesses that he wants Rohan to become his personal guard. After all, the world they live in is filled with danger at every corner. To Chansu, having someone like Rohan, one of the strongest swordsmen alive, as his protector would be a massive relief. Rohan replies that he'll consider the offer if Chansu can boost the growth effect further. Hearing this, Chansu eagerly promises to enhance the rate by 50,000 points each day, and on top of that, supply Rohan with 10 apples daily. Rohan, however, is more focused on the apples than anything else, and asks if there's another way he could obtain them. Chansu quickly reassures him that he doesn't need to worry, he'll take care of it. Meanwhile, Doji and the others tremble in fear, realizing that Rohan might actually end up living with them from now on. When Chansu turns around, he immediately notices the nervous looks on their faces. Rohan also catches on, but before he can say anything, Chansu lies, claiming that they're just shy around new people. Trying to smooth things over, Chansu encourages everyone to get along with Rohan. But instead of warming up, the group bolts away in terror. Chansu is left standing there, completely dumbfounded. Trying to shake off the awkward moment, he moves on and tells Rohan about his first official request. Suddenly, Rohan's sharp senses pick up movement behind some bushes. When he goes to check, he finds a cat lounging there lazily. Because the cat looks so calm and harmless, Chansu assumes it poses no threat. Before Rohan can stop him, Chansu walks right up to the creature and reaches out to pet it. The cat opens its eyes, startled, only to find an unfamiliar, strange-looking face looming over it. And in sheer panic, it leaps away as if it just came face-to-face with a ghost. The cat hisses at Chansu, the sound sharp enough to send chills crawling down his spine. Then his status window pops up, revealing the shocking truth. The cat is actually the Apostle of Negation, and it has officially declared war on his block. Tears fill Chansu's eyes as he turns to Rohan, asking if the cat really is the Apostle of Negation just because it declared war on him. Rohan, unimpressed, thinks he's just talking nonsense. Trying to calm things down, Chansu walks toward the cat, wondering why he's even about to fight a small animal. But Rohan quickly stops him, saying that the cat isn't his real opponent. Rohan explains that the apostles Chansu will be fighting will soon appear through the block's border, and shockingly they'll be human. That revelation leaves Chansu stunned. Monsters were easy enough to kill, but humans, that's an entirely different story. As if reading his mind, Rohan tells him not to hesitate. He's free to kill anything tainted by negation. Rohan adds that the apostles have the privilege of resurrection at the temple. Hearing that, Chansu looks at him in disbelief and asks if he's basically talking about a checkpoint. Rohan casually confirms it. Chansu frowns, calling it an unfair advantage. His side doesn't get the luxury of retrying if they make a mistake. Meanwhile, the Apostles of Negation can act as recklessly as they want without suffering any real consequences. Even so, Chansu feels fired up by the challenge. Knowing he's at a disadvantage only fuels his excitement, and he turns to Rohan, asking if he'll lend a hand in the upcoming battle. Right on cue, a group of Negation loyalists, both monsters and human apostles, emerge within the block. One of them steps forward, holding a megaphone, and shouts loudly for Chansu to come out and face them. Meanwhile, at the alchemy headquarters, Hasujin is examining the ostrich tail sap under her tools. She can't help but think about how remarkable Chansu has become. In her mind, she believes his strength must come from some powerful artifact. Artifacts, divine relics created for those chosen or favored by a god, sometimes even formed from the remnants of a dead deity. These artifacts grant their wielders a portion of the god's power. But after analyzing the idea, Hasujin doubts that Chansu is actually using one. Such relics are nearly impossible to control unless they align perfectly with the user's divine nature. She starts to ponder the endless possibilities that could unfold from here. Suddenly, Unsu bursts into the room in a rush. Hasujin freezes, completely startled by his sudden entrance. Her shock deepens as Unsu walks straight toward her. He's holding the ostrich tail sap tightly in his hands. Hasujin yells at him, demanding to know where he got that sap from. The question throws Unsu off, but deep down Hasujin senses something big and possibly disastrous is about to happen once again. Back at Chansu's blog, the apostles are shouting, urging him to come out before they lose patience and tear everything apart. But hidden in the bushes nearby, Chansu and Rohan quietly watch, waiting for the right moment to strike. Chansu watches the group from his hiding spot, wondering why these guys are acting so recklessly. He turns to Rohan and asks if it's because they can just resurrect after dying. Rohan calmly nods, saying that's probably why they're so bold. They know death isn't permanent for them. Still, their time to engage the enemies is limited, and they both know it. Chansu feels a sense of relief having Rohan beside him. In fact, he's putting his complete trust in the Swordsmaster now. Whatever happens, he's counting on Rohan to handle it. With that thought, Chansu steps out of the bushes, gripping his sickle tightly in his hand. The apostle stares him down with clear disdain, as if looking at some weakling, and mockingly orders him to bring apples. Another guy joins in, laughing at Chansu for being outnumbered and claiming he doesn't stand a chance. But then the mood shifts. The group starts getting uneasy because Chansu isn't reacting at all. He just stands there calm and silent, which feels strangely unnerving. After a tense moment of silence, Chansu finally speaks, calling the apostle nothing but trash, someone not even worth worrying about. His confidence comes from knowing that Rohan, the Swordsmaster, is right behind him. Before any of these negation followers can try something crazy, Rohan would have already dealt with them. Then Chansu throws another jab, telling the apostle that if he really wants apples, he should go get them at the department store. The apostle's face twists in rage at the insult, and he growls, asking if Chansu can handle the consequences of his arrogance. But Chansu just goes even further, completely shattering the man's pride. He taunts him again, saying he should go ask his mother all those stupid questions instead of bothering him. The words hit the apostle exactly where it hurts most. Furious, he orders his subordinates to attack and kill Chansu on the spot. Meanwhile, back at the alchemy office, Unsu keeps pressing Hasujin about where she got the ostrich tail sap. Hasujin feels tempted to tell him, but she reminds him that customer information is strictly confidential. Unsu sighs and says he's only asking because of the labor fee, not because he's trying to pry. Unsu finally comes clean, explaining that the ostrich tail sap Hasujin brought in has a much higher purity level than the regular batches. He emphasizes how rare that is. Maintaining such purity is almost impossible in most cases. The consistency itself is something that even skilled alchemists struggle to achieve. Then Unsu pulls out a contract sheet and hands it to Hasujin, suggesting a formal deal. Hasujin hesitates, saying she'll have to ask the cultivator first, but Unsu proposes signing a provisional contract in the meantime. That answer makes Unsu genuinely pleased. He assures her that whoever is responsible for producing the sap will always be welcome in the alchemy department. Meanwhile, the lead apostle observes Chansu carefully, noticing how unusually calm he is despite being so outnumbered. He wonders what gives Chansu such confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. On the other hand, Chansu is already strategizing, thinking about how to handle the group of skeletons marching toward him. As the skeletons charge in, Chansu activates his mass decapitation skill. In one swift motion, he wipes out the entire skeleton squad, their bones scattering across the battlefield. The apostle is left speechless, as his subordinates are sent flying through the air like feathers caught in the wind. Chansu adds insult to injury, mocking the apostle by saying his subordinates are pathetically weak. Standing tall atop the pile of bones, Chansu taunts him further, asking if he's ready to surrender now. The apostle clenches his teeth and pulls out a glowing orb. Channeling its power, he summons a giant monster known as Heracles. Heracles is terrifying, a massive figure with a lion's head grotesquely attached to his left shoulder. But instead of panicking, Chansu just smirks and mocks the apostle again, saying he has terrible taste when it comes to naming things. Enraged, the apostle orders Heracles to crush Chansu. Heracles lunges forward, swinging a massive fist, but Chansu easily dodges the attack. Before the creature can recover or strike again, Chansu swings his sickle with deadly precision. Heracles crashes into the ground, leaving the apostle in shock, especially since he had just been bragging about how strong his summon was. So he steps in with a smirk, reminding the apostle that he was the one who charged at Chansu so confidently. Now that he's been beaten by a mere farmer, he has no right to complain. She adds that she doesn't mind getting her hands dirty if needed, but she'll be expecting extra pay since her original job was only to guide the way. Chansu grins, his excitement growing as the battle heats up. That is, until Soi suddenly turns her gaze toward him. She explains that she uses a skill called negation of life, a deadly curse that marks her target. The apostle bursts into laughter, realizing that Chansu has just fallen into Soi's trap. He taunts Chansu, telling him he's about to witness what happens to anyone who dares cross the power of negation. But Soi snaps at him, yelling that he's forgetting why they came here in the first place. As she dashes through the forest, she can smell apples in the air, the scent guiding her as she realizes she's close to her destination. Suddenly, a faint movement behind her catches her attention. Meanwhile, Chansu's eyes suddenly snap open. He finds himself back on Earth. The last thing he remembers was fighting against the forces of negation, but now somehow he's somewhere completely different. Looking around, he notices everything feels off, as if the world itself has changed. Then he hears familiar voices calling his name from behind. He turns and there they are, his parents standing right before him. His face lights up instantly, overwhelmed with joy. He runs toward them and wraps his arms around them, tears streaming down his face. Crying, Chansu begs them to tell him where they've been and pleads with them not to leave again. But suddenly, his worst nightmare begins to unfold all over again. His parents push him away. He screams desperately, begging them not to go. Pain surges through him as he cries out in agony, but then Rohan's voice breaks through, pulling him out of the horrific illusion. Rohan tells him that what he saw wasn't real, it was the result of Soi's curse. During the rescue, Rohan had struck Soi on the arm, shocking her. She never expected the swordsmaster himself to be there. Overwhelmed, Soi collapses to her knees. Fueled by anger, Chansu rushes at her, swinging his sickle with fury. Chansu charges forward, ready to punish Soi for making him cry and for dragging him through that cruel illusion. But before he can reach her, Rohan steps in first. With one clean strike, he cuts Soi down. Her body sinks beneath the murky swamp water, disappearing without a trace. Rohan turns to Chansu, apologizing for stepping in when it wasn't his place. But Chansu isn't angry, in fact, he's grateful that Rohan ended it quickly. He suggests they return to base for now and come back later to clean up the aftermath. As they walk, Rohan asks him about his plans for the future. Chansu confidently replies that his goal is to become the strongest force in the world. But first, he plans to take control of all the surrounding blocks one by one. He asks Rohan if he'll keep helping him with this mission. Rohan smirks and says he has no reason to refuse as long as Chansu pays him in apples. Laughing, Chansu promises to give him as many apples as he wants. The two start heading back together. On their way, they unexpectedly come across the black cat again. Curious, Chansu asks Rohan what exactly the deal is with that creature. Rohan casually explains that the cat is one of the 7 calamities, a territorial predator of immense power. Chansu is stunned. He always thought it was just a harmless cat, and now he realizes how close he'd been to getting himself killed without even knowing it. Meanwhile, the system notifies another player that a surcharge penalty has been issued due to the extreme difference between his faction's strength and Chansu's weaker one. He's fined 1 million gold coins as punishment. Outraged, the man argues that the penalty is unfair, claiming that Chansu had a swordmaster backing him up. But then something shifts. The man notices a terrifying presence and panics. Suddenly desperate, he begs the system to come back, saying he's ready to pay the fine after all. Just then, undead monsters drag him out of his cell, their bony hands gripping him tightly. As if things couldn't get worse, a menacing apostle of negation appears. It's Danha. She demands that he explain everything in detail. She warns that if he lies or stays silent, his suffering will be far worse than death. Terrified, the man spills everything, claiming he discovered the cultivation site for the Emperor's apple. Danha narrows her eyes, convinced he's just trying to save himself. He insists he's telling the truth, saying it was Rohan who ruined his plans. Danha still doubts it. If Rohan had truly fought beside Chansu, the reparations wouldn't have been set so high. Desperate, the man continues, swearing that Soi was defeated too. That revelation actually shocks Danha. Rising from her seat, Danha walks toward him with cold precision. The man's bravado fades instantly as her intimidating presence fills the room. She tells him that since Soi can't be held accountable anymore, he'll have to bear the consequences of their failure himself. Danha smirks wickedly, saying she has a little proposition for him. She grabs him by the head, binding him with a magical contract that will keep him imprisoned until he fulfills her command. She orders him to head to the cultivation site and start working on it immediately. The man protests, insisting that it's impossible, but Danha cuts him off, coldly stating that the only way out of this mess is for him to infiltrate the Emperor's apple cultivation site, no matter what it takes. And with that, the story comes to an end.